Ulu, thank you very much, the Global Forum, inviting me. And that was just a few questions, wasn't it? So, could answer those, no problem. First of all, then, the internet. I mean, we talk about telecommunications, we talk about the internet. I mean, surely what the European Commission have recognized, I mean, having been involved in the framework in 2002 and 2008 in the negotiations in the European telecommunications framework, it's clear from what you've just said, if you like, the progress that has been made from telecommunications to e-communication services to the internet. So there's this acknowledgement, if you like, that the future is the internet. So I think two or three things come out of this. First of all, smarter regulation. And I think the issue that we face in smarter regulation is that we're faced with a paradigm that not all regulation is the same. We still have a situation where we have to have what we call in English horses for courses. There is no single global paradigm to regulation of the internet or regulation of telecommunication markets. And I think this really comes home to you. You can sit here in Finland in this sophisticated environment where the government has legislated for internet access for all people, in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe, and you get a sense of where the internet is going, where internet access is going, how people using the internet, both for their personal lives, in their social lives, in work, public services, the internet has become something which has transformed society. But only a couple of weeks ago, some of us were in Nairobi discussing with the Commonwealth and with African governments and leaders access to telecommunication services there and access to the internet there. And that is a different paradigm, a very different paradigm indeed. So on the one hand, FICORA legitimately noting that the European Commission in their review of the telecommunications framework has to be smart, has to be targeted, doesn't want to interfere where business is already doing a good job, where competitive markets are delivering services for customers and for business. But on the other hand, we have the situation where in some markets in Africa and in Latin America and other parts of the world, there is no telecommunications framework. There is no independent regulator. There is no economic regulation. And there, the very tenets of having economic access to the internet, of having competitive markets, of consumers being able to use the services that we take for granted in Europe is needed. So, you know, one can't dismiss regulation. Regulation is, you know, depends on the market you're looking at. But what does ICANN have to offer? I represent ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and we have a role in the governance of the internet. We, if you like, are the custodians of the domain name system, ensuring that the top level of the internet, the root of the internet, the top level domains of the internet, the country codes, the .FIs, the .SWs, the country codes, .UKs, and the generic codes, the .coms, the .nets, the .orgs, etc., that all the domain name system remains a single entity, that the internet remains interoperable. And I think the lesson of the, if you like, the governance of the internet is twofold. One, that it involves all the players. Now, you might think, what a stupid thing for that man to say, to come all the way from Geneva to Ulu and say that regulation involves all the players. Of course it involves all the players. Regulation has to involve all the players. It involves all the players in Europe, it involves all the players at ICANN, all the different constituencies come together to ensure that the regulation, the governance of the internet is taken forward in a sensible way. But this is not a paradigm that's shared globally. There are still countries calling for a UN system of governance of the internet, for a UN system of governing cyberspace, of governing privacy, of governing various intellectual property issues. So we are still faced with this debate. Is the future of governance in the hands of stakeholders, all the stakeholders together, the users, the businesses, the civil society, and of course the governments, or is it in the hands of just the governments? And that is still a debate that's being played out. But in the ICANN sense, it clearly, what we have shown in the way that the domain name system is managed by this community of different actors, that you bring the different wisdom, the different benefits, the different perspectives to the table, and as a result, you get better regulation. So if there's any example to use from the internet, the governance of the internet space, to the telecommunications, to the smarter regulation in elsewhere, I think it is this sense that you bring all the players to the table.
Thank you, Nigel. So, could we say it works with interactions with all interested parties, because the topic, the stakes are well defined, or what are the unknowns, and what are the unknowns in the future? How will it work 5 or 10 years from now in your view?
I mean, it's very difficult, obviously, to predict the future. So the whole aspects of internet governance is a debate that's been ongoing. And for those of you that follow the work of the International Telecommunications Union, for those of you that follow the work at the UN, you will know that this debate is long-standing, and this debate goes on. There's a high-level meeting, a high-level conference in the UN General Assembly in December called the WSIS +10 Review Conference. Now, I mean, they have great names, but this essentially is looking at something that in 2003 and 2005, the UN hosted this so-called World Summit on the Information Society to look at the way, partially to look at the way the internet was governed. And this is being reviewed 10 years hence. So hence this review conference at the UN, when many different ministers and ambassadors from the 192 UN countries will meet and discuss the future of governance. And, you know, in answer to your question, yes, I mean, there are still some serious aspects to be looked at and to be considered. And some governments legitimately say the internet is throwing up so many difficulties with cybercrime, with child abuse issues, with fraud, intellectual property theft. How can it possibly be governed? How should it be governed? Who should govern it? And there is going to be obviously serious discussions. But I think we come back to this paradigm that here, in this conference here, and in many other conferences that we all go to, is it just governments that are speaking? Is it just businesses that are speaking? Is it just users? No, in most cases, the most successful ways forward are when all the actors come together. And I think that will be the paradigm of the future. But if I may just add one thing that's happening at the moment, which I think is significant in this respect. The governance of the domain name system, the governance of the technical side of the internet, is something that has only been in existence since 1998. Before 1998, the whole governance of the internet, the giving out of domain names, of top-level domain names, was in the hands of the US government, or in the hands of the University of Southern California, to be precise, under a contract to the US administration. The US administration in 1998 created ICANN as a non-for-profit body to govern this domain name system. The US maintained one link, which was that the US authorities maintained this backstop regulation, if you like, this backstop ability to monitor what goes into the root of the internet. So if a new top-level domain comes along, or a new country code comes along, Southern Sudan being the last example of a new country going into the root of the internet, the US has an overview of that. The US is giving up this. There's a project going on, this transition of this responsibility of the US to the global community. When that is complete, which hopefully it will be complete early next year, it'll mean all governments have equal say in the governance of the internet along with other stakeholders. And I think that will help the future governance of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Desiree, you...
I think this is very topical.